first, please God, I hope everyone had a lot of Blue Bottle coffee, so that, you know, because being up first this morning, it puts a lot of pressure on me. The other thing is, if I start sounding like a corporate shill, then please let me know, because I've been doing this. I used to do it in my previous life, and I feel like I probably have some hardwired switch in the back of my head that's going to start, you know, making me do a song and dance that sounds, you know, really inauthentic and pretty cheesy. So feel free to, you know, if you have a quince or something from last night, you can toss it at me. I'll get the message. So I've got a video that hopefully will help set up what Quad is all about. Just a quick resume on me, just so you know how profoundly uncool I am. I worked basically in the sports and footwear industry for about 25 years with Reebok, with Salomon, with Nike, and you know, I learned a lot. And I think one of the messages you'll see here, it's kind of the opposite of James, where he was a beginner and everything. I had been through everything, but I had to unlearn everything that I had been taught in order to try to make this thing work, which has been an interesting process unto itself. So with that, I'll just set up, I think this video can tell you more in a really short period of time about kind of what Quad is about than I could with a bunch of words. So.
Some leathers, they're really tough, so you got to start with a good leather, a nice supple leather. Some suedes, they squeak when you punch them. That's how dry they are, and they hang on to your tools, so you have a hard time pulling them back out or getting them in. If your leather's real boardy, you're not going to make a good shoe right off the bat. You can wet your shoe, but wetting and drying firms your leather up, doesn't make it feel supple or smooth or soft after you're done with it. So we try to do things dry. We use beeswax on the threads. That helps to keep it all stuck together and bound, as we kind of twist them to lock them into place. And your hand sweat, if you're real sweaty and stuff, you can unlock your strings, you can make it all come apart, but wax keeps you kind of dry and keeps your fingers sticky on your tools. If you can't pull your needles through your holes, you're just going to fight these things all day long. I've been sewing since I was 19. My dad taught me. He knew back then it wasn't a really good trade to get into because it had been petering out back when he was teaching me. But he said, you know, it's still a good living and it wouldn't hurt. Sewers, they tend to be a rambunctious crowd. You stand at a bench all day and work your butt off, you get a little antsy. A good hand sewer can customize, like when he needs to. When things aren't quite right, he can pick his scissors up and trim it into play, or, you know, make it work for him. As long as things aren't too tight or too loose, then you start stretching things out of proportion, and then it's not worth putting it together. You're your own boss in a sense. You're the one that determines whether you do a good job or not. If we slop it together, it's not going to be a very good piece of art, but if you take your time and you take pride in your work, then your art comes out really nice, and people wear it, and that's why I like to build them, and maybe that's why they like to wear them, because they know this sort of, I don't know, crafted history about it. I'll walk down a stream with them, let them dry, and wear them again the next day. And I just keep doing that. And then I know whether the glue's working on them, whether the stitch is going to hold, whether the hand sewer did a good job putting the components together, if the foam is going to get saturated, or if it's not. There's a lot of little variables, part of the testing program. That's part of the wearing. I guess I got the best job.
Okay, great. So, as I said, I think, images are a lot more powerful than any way I could describe. And I was telling somebody last night, my most powerful kind of marketing tool, right? Yeah, good morning, is normally is to bring people just up to the shop and just let them, you walk in there and you smell the leather and you hear the silence, because we don't have machines except for the leather clicker that you hear kind of pounding in the background. So it's a completely different experience from going into a quote-unquote factory. It's much more like a studio. So that in itself, the experiential piece of it is powerful. And actually, it even goes to the marketing. I brought this along just to show you, but when I joined, after, again, 25 years in corporate world, when I joined Quaddy 3 years ago, I outlawed PowerPoint. That was my first act as president, because I just was so sick of what that was. And so when I present to our clients or PR journalists or whatever, I use this book. It's basically just a photo album of our brand. Actually, Libby gave me this idea. Thank you, Lib. Many years ago. To, just the tactile flipping through the book really does something for people that, no PowerPoint can really accomplish. And I'll leave that somewhere if you want to take a look at it at some point. But so my journey into Quaddy, let me tell you briefly what happened. Basically, it started actually in a Nike employee performance review with Duke Stump at a brew pub. We were about 3 beers into it, I think, at that point. That was our review process. And, Duke was like, John, I perceive you, you're saying, as you're like a thoroughbred, but you're kind of just staying in the middle of the pack. And I was thinking to myself, you're right. And it's because I don't really give a shit where the race is going, And I also thought Duke was pretty kind of upbeat and ebullient, and I know why, because how many months later did you bail on Nike and go? But one of the things that did come out of that was, and again, Duke had gone through the process of seeing a kind of a life coach / career coach. So I went to see this guy locally, and I was at the point in my life, and I think the iceberg's I was kind of lost at sea in terms of my job, my career, myself. I was having difficulties in my marriage as well, and I was just kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life in my 40s at that point, and saying, where do you go from here? And the thing that came out with this coach was, I'm kind of most comfortable writing. So he said, well, why don't you write something? And maybe that'll encapsulate, your thoughts and what you're trying to do. So I put together what I thought was an article called Aim for the Icebergs, and that's why you see this image here. And it was kind of just a summary of what my philosophy was about brands and marketing and all that stuff. But what I really didn't know was that it really became this, it wasn't really an article, it really became a manifesto for me. It really started to dictate how I lived my life and conducted my professional existence. And then it really became a mission, so it kind of progressed from, it's kind of snuck up on me. So there's a couple of principles. It's tough to read at the bottom here, that I set forth in this, and that I'm really that I live now. Niche power, it's the idea of small is not necessarily bad. Authenticity is currency. That's something I've been using for a long time, because I think, again, it's so important in today's world. People are trying to, you know, fake so many things. You have to earn authenticity. You either got it or you don't. It's not something you can manufacture. You have to earn it. Passion is so important. I don't have to go on about that. And then aim for the icebergs is just this metaphor I've come up with you look for opportunities that seem small but have a depth and a weight to them that not only makes it a larger opportunity, but roots it against any other competitors or all the other noise that's out there in the world. So, you know, again, it came out of me, and then I guess I started to go around looking for how I could apply it. You know, I mean, what am I going to do with all this good stuff? So it started after that, or it came back to really product. Because I'm a product person. I just design and how things are made and just fascinate me. And I had seen this product at a store way back when, and it always stuck in my mind. And I actually bought a pair for my designers at the company I was working at the time. And I had known about this brand Quaddy since I was a little kid, because my parents actually lived in the next town over, up way in down East Maine, before I was born. So I knew the brand. I didn't even know it was still around. So I kind of stuck it in the back of my head. And little did I know it was going to come back around. And, you know, it's one of those karmic kind of occurrences that led me back to it. And I brought the product here, and we'll pass it around a little bit later, but it just knocked me out. And I said, there's something about this I got to come back to. And eventually I did. So I tracked down the people who own the company in Perry, Maine. And this is now the site of our customer service operation in Perry. It used to be the fraternal grandfather of my business partner's store called the Wigwam, and he sold Quaddy moccasins. He started in 1946, I believe. But we've since converted it to, there's cubicles inside there now, but there's still also you can't see it here. There's a shed next to it with a giant stuffed moose in it named Barney. So one of these days I'm going to get Barney down to the shop in Lewiston. But for now, he's just too big to move. So I called these people up 6 months later. They called me back finally, and because they were just too busy, and they were there's 6 of them trying to make shoes in this little area. So. Finally, I tracked them down. Finally, I set up a meeting. So I took off for Perry, Maine. And I just brought this up in case you don't even know where Maine is, because there's people from all over the world here. So this is the United States. Way out here, up almost in Canada, is Maine. Okay, Maine is a huge state. It's 1/3 the size of Italy. And it only has 1.6 million people in it. So actually, at the 2010 census, it was decided Maine is the most rural state in the entire union. Actually beat out Vermont. So, and then when you get to Maine, like I said, this giant, vast expanse of Maine surrounded by Canada. Lewiston, where our factory is here, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Boston's probably down here where the wood trim is. Lewiston is here. Perry is way the heck out. Literally, the easternmost point in the United States is the next town over, in Perry, Maine. So you actually drive from the south, they call it down east. That's why you even have that label there. So it's literally the farthest east you can get in the United States. And it takes, from my house to get to Perry, takes 5 hours, mostly in Maine. So the power of place, which I was saying today, but I think that theme is going to come up over and over again. And Maine obviously plays a tremendous role in what we do at Quaddy. Even the fact that the native people of down East Maine are called the Passamaquoddies, and that's where obviously the name comes from. There's a lot of things called Quaddy in that part of Maine. And Maine is just such a special, special place. It's always been my touchstone throughout my life of going back there and just experiencing it, whether it's the different landscapes of Maine. So you've got this huge wild ocean, 3,000 kilometers of coastline. You've got over 3,000 lakes. You got Mount Katahdin there in the autumn, which is the end point of the Appalachian Trail. So it has a lot of meaning for a lot of people who've done the AT. You've got lakes like Sebago, which are huge lakes. And even there, that old canoe, Old Town Canoe, is based in Maine, where you have these gorgeous crafted old crafts. So Maine has always been this kind of wild, special. The people are really cranky. It's just got, it's such character to it, and again, it informs really everything we do. And the Passamaquoddy, as I mentioned, the native culture there is fantastic. It's so inspiring. Actually, one of the guys I've met on my way here is an artist named David Moses Bridges, and one of the things the Passamaquoddy are famous for are A, moccasins, B, they make everything by weaving or by sewing. So that's why you even see the motif in this really old illustration. I said to him, if you were going to make me a shoebox, what would you do? And he came back with this. This is a shoebox, but it's completely made out of birch bark, which actually the winter bark. The stitching you see here are spruce roots, and then he etches all these designs right into the bark. So you get an incredible piece of art that's also utilitarian, because they actually use this stuff back in the day. And I just found this kind of thing so inspiring, along with the basket making they have. They have a special kind of grass that only they use to make these incredible baskets, down to, this just killed me. This illustration of this little porcupine on the basket is actually made with porcupine quills. So the level of artistry, but still using the materials that are available to them, that kind of economy is, again, a hallmark of Maine. People in Maine, again, if you drive through backwoods Maine, they never throw anything away. I mean, whether it's their cars. You don't remember those old satellite dishes from like the 70s that were the size of, you know, I don't know, like 15 feet across? Those things are still out there too. So sometimes they take it to an extreme. So as I mentioned, here's my Proustian reference from you yesterday, James. The most important thing I learned was forgetting of things past. I had to just dump all that stuff I had learned in my previous life in order to make this thing work. So I got on board with these guys. They were making shoes up in Perry. There's no people up in Perry. So we had to move the company down to Lewiston, which is kind of the headquarters or the home and hearth of shoemaking industry in Maine, where many brands used to live, and they were all purchased by large conglomerates and shipped off to various parts around the world. So that's our building in Lewiston, Maine. Lewiston has lots of these buildings. Most of them are abandoned. But one of the things I knew from talking to people was a lot of the people who used to make shoes in Lewiston were still there. They were just pushing brooms or driving trucks or whatever. So we decided, all right, we got to go where the people are. We got to go where the talent is if we're going to make this Quaddy brand work from a footwear perspective. So we moved it back, got some space in this old building, and got it going again. So we have old buildings, we have a bunch of old workers, and we have pretty much a dead industry in Lewiston. But we had a couple of things going for us. We had a brand, we had a great quality product, and we had this kind of a re-emerging interest, kind of post-economic meltdown, post-whatever you want to say, in products that are made well, and especially made in USA. And even to the level of made in Maine when it comes to footwear. Actually, I tell people, I found out in Japanese, Maine shoes is one word to describe a certain kind of product that's made in Maine, because they have that much reverence for the quality of the product. And in fact, people from Tokyo used to show up on buses up in Perry and just knock on the door of my partner Kevin Kirsten's and looking for a pair of Quaddy shoes, which I thought was crazy, but they would do it. This is the shop. This is in Lewiston. As I said, you walk in there, it's a bunch of people sewing. There's some sewing machines as well to do some of the patterns in the back. There's a cutting machine. But the overall impression is it smells like leather, and it's quiet. Guys are in there sewing. So that's Norm. He's probably prototypical of what we do there. Super skilled, but not so young. We do have guys like Ray who are starting to learn the trade. Ray's actually really good. He's 25. He's been doing it since he was 18. So our challenge really is to train the next generation of craftspeople. And that's going to be a big challenge for us as we try to grow this brand. We have a global distribution now. We ship to over 80 countries off of our website. So it's going to be tough for us to scale. You know, like David said, I mean, people say, well, what's your, you know, we don't carry any inventory. Everything's made to order, whether you order one pair from the web or you order 300 pairs. And it gets done when it gets done. And I thought that was going to be a huge disadvantage to us at the beginning. I thought, oh God, we got to get down to like a week and a half, blah, 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 blah. Turns out people don't mind waiting. They think, you know, we're making it for you. I guess the attitude, take your time, get it right. And our cancellation rate based on quote unquote the wait right now is about less than 1%. People don't mind, you know, if it's worth the wait, it's worth the wait. That's basically what people are telling us. So from a personal standpoint, I feel like I've quite literally put myself in these guys' hands, and I'm well taken care of. You know, I didn't get investors to do this. I get it completely financed and on my own. It's been completely bootstrapped from day one, basically. And, you know, you mentioned a little bit yesterday, James. I mean, I literally have gone into weeks where I didn't know how I was going to make payroll by the end of the week. And again, it's scary sometimes, for sure. But I do remember after us doing well for about a year, we had a stretch where we couldn't, and I had to gather the entire shop together and say, guys, you're not going to get a check on Friday, and maybe like Tuesday. And I was, oh man, was I nervous going into that, because there's a lot of big guys in the shop. And but you know what? They were great. They realized that they'd rather be doing this and maybe getting paid a few days late than driving a truck or doing whatever else they had done. So that made me feel good that we kind of had a mission that we were all sharing together. And I think more than anything, you know, I don't use the word brand anymore, by the way. I think it's been so done to death. It's just, to me, it's a company. And a company is first and foremost is people. And that's what this has really reinforced for me, that without these guys and without everybody who works there, and without, you know, our customers, our clients, you know, business is people. It's not marketing, it's not branding, it's not this, it's not that. It really gets you back down to what's real. And people appreciate it. And I'll sprint to the finish here, sorry. This J. Crew is one of our customers. They ran a double truck ad in the New York Times style section at Christmas time with this a couple of years ago, which I think that ad probably cost like 250 grand. I don't know, but obviously we could never do anything like that. And they don't buy a ton of stuff, but they just love what we do. And even Vogue loves what we do. That's Mrs. Tom Brady on a horse. And you know, we've got, just by doing what we do, we get all these people picking up on the brand, and I guess it's just free for us. We literally do not spend a dime on marketing, except for building our website, obviously, to purvey the product. So before I get kicked off here, so last little point on the product. I mentioned this is the iconic product for us, the ring boot. And the iconic product, even within the ring boot, is this one made out of what's called chrome pack leather, which is 14-ounce leather that really comes from saddle reed. It's so thick, and I'll pass it around. You see how heavy it is. No machine can sew this thing. It has to be 100% done by hand, which means you have to break it in as well, which is a commitment to the product. But it will literally last your whole life, and we can replace the sole. And we have people who are on their 5th and 6th soles in terms of the product. To me, this is the epitome of what Maine can do that nobody else can do, and what we can do that nobody else would even be crazy enough to do. And whenever I need to be inspired, I always go back to looking at this kind of thing. And I always show this and display this in any kind of presentation that we have. It's obviously evolved into other iterations as we've gone along, and we've even started to do our own version of innovation. It's not quite what athletic shoe companies do, but I can talk to you more about that if anyone's interested in it. The last point I'll make is I heard the guy who founded Twitter, which was weird, use this, they asked him, well, what was your plan, blah, 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 what do you do? And he said, well, our philosophy really was to first create value, then profit. And that really struck me as something, again, just with that attitude alone, that's going to dictate a lot of the decisions you make and how you run your business and your life and just everything you do. It really goes back to that basic philosophy of you have a capability and then you have to have a philosophy attached to it. People approach me once in a while because the brand is pretty nice, about buying it or investing in it or whatever. But the thing that always kills me is usually less than 3 sentences into it, the money people always say, so John, what's your exit strategy? And I never thought about that before. I was like, exit strategy. And then finally, after maybe a couple times they asked me that, I had a really good solution to it, which is, well, I have a 4-year-old. So I guess that gives me about maybe 21 more years to get this thing right before it's going to be somebody else's problem. So that's usually the end of that conversation with the money people. But so to be continued. But the journey has been, it's been tough, but it's been so. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'd love to get up in the morning and go after this, and just even hearing everyone else's stories this week is going to be so inspiring to me. And again, for anyone who's thinking about doing this, believe me, I'd be the last guy. Like I said, I'm not a doer. I'm a thinker. Honestly, I'd rather think about things forever and never do anything. So I think if you've got a notion, you know what? Go for it. Okay? Thanks.